Hi everyone, and welcome to day 7 of Quarantini. I'm Dr. Eric Servini. Trying to switch over to a new platform to do some of this live streaming, but Facebook is giving me some problems, so I apologize that the quality is not as good as usual. So, this is our new permanent time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And so hopefully that'll allow more people to join live and participate. Because of the time change, we will be discussing the 4th chapter, which is technically part 2, chapter 1 of Giovanni's Room tomorrow. And today, this morning, I spent talking to Kayla Husen, who is the first openly lesbian photojournalist in the early gay rights movement, also known as the homophile movement. And she is currently 90 years old. She's one of the last remaining activists who were part of that pre-Stonewall movement, getting involved years before the concept of gay liberation was well known across the country. The number of activists numbered in the dozens. So she is currently cooped up in an assisted living facility in Pennsylvania, and I got to talk to her, and she said things are pretty crazy over there, and all her meals are coming through from outside the door. So these are examples of people who we need to be protecting right now. It's us staying inside, making sure that we're not infecting people like the people taking care of Kay and those who are most at risk of falling ill. So I am so excited to be able to share her story. She's one of the characters in the book, The Deviants' War, which you can find out more about on my website. But if you're just joining in, again, this is our new permanent time. And so tomorrow we will be discussing part 2, chapter 1 of Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. If you have not been following along yet and you want to jump in, it's not too late. You can go to quarantini.lgbt, and that's all my past videos, all the assignments. The first chapter of the book is even uploaded as a PDF, so you can check it out there. Now, today, because we're not going to be discussing the book, Prince George's County Memorial Library System in Maryland had their PGCML book chat on Twitter today. They were asking a lot of people, what are we reading? What are we up to during this crisis? Of course, I responded saying that I'm reading Giovanni's Room with y'all. And Erickson Y also asked what I had on my book stand. And so of course, this entire very small apartment is filled with books, which you can't really see, but they're all under the TV there. But I have another bookcase there, and then that entire closet is also full of books behind the green screen. But right next to bed, I keep a permanent stack of some of my favorite books that just remind me why I love to write when it's the most often painful thing to do. So I thought I would share that with you. So here we have Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote, one of my favorite authors of all time. He wrote one of the first explicitly gay novels that came out in 1948. Other Rooms, Other Voices, phenomenal. Of course, In Cold Blood essentially invented the genre of true crime. So he's one of my heroes, and of course, Audrey Hepburn. So next we have The Handmaid's Tale. Of course, if you haven't watched this series, it's a wonderfully adapted series, but this book, I think, was one of my favorite dystopian novels, and more important than ever, especially as women's rights are under attack today. Third, Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, absolutely phenomenal examination of race relations in America today. If you haven't read it, it's a quick read, and it's beautifully, beautifully written. Highly, highly recommend it. Last in my permanent bedside stack, I have Christopher Isherwood, The Berlin Stories. If you don't know Christopher Isherwood, look him up. He is one of my favorite, not only authors, but just figures and personalities in all of history. He's kind of my role model. He's originally British, went to Cambridge just like me, actually dropped out, or flunked, depending on who you ask, and during the war actually moved to Los Angeles. So if you've heard of the film A Single Man, that's based on one of his novels, and more likely, you've heard of the result of these stories. So it's technically 2 books. They're loosely based on his time in Berlin and Weimar Germany. So in the years leading up to the Nazi reign of terror. So you can see the underground gay world implicitly through these books. Then he later wrote the true story of what actually happened when he was there, where it's not just implicitly gay like this book, but much more explicitly gay. It's called Christopher and His Kind. It was adapted by the BBC into an amazing film. We might be watching it, but if you want to get ahead, Christopher and His Kind is phenomenal. More likely, you already are familiar with this book because this is what was adapted into the musical Capote. So everything, Sally Bowles, all you can thank Christopher Isherwood. So check him out. Then the books that are on my to be read list that I keep on my desk over here. City of Night. This is a 1963 novel, one of the first looks at the U.S. Underground. And this was the book that kind of prompted Quarantini in the first place. I originally was trying to get a book club together in Los Angeles to read it because a lot of gay LA is featured in this book. And of course we had to cancel it. And we ended up actually having our first session to talk about this book, and it was well attended via video conference. So it's pretty hefty. But if one of your cities, New York or New Orleans or LA, is in this book, you can check out some of those chapters and see kind of the more gritty underground. Next up, Legendary Children by Tom and Lorenzo just came out. If you like RuPaul's Drag Race, what they do is something really remarkable, which is using Drag Race as a lens to tell a larger story of LGBT history in America. So highly recommend it. They're phenomenal guys and have a wonderful blog. Transgender History by Susan Stryker, the professor, really a pioneer in trans studies. And I had the chance to see her speak in San Francisco at a conference a few months ago. And she's wonderful. This is a primer. This is where activism should be and is now, is in this world, because gay men, cis gay men like myself, especially white gay men like myself, things are pretty good for us, right? We can get married. We can usually keep our jobs, not everywhere, but trans rights is so essential right now. If you are trans, you cannot serve in the U.S. military. Think about that for a second. So if you need something to brush up on where the vanguard of LGBT activism is now and where we should be turning to right now, check this out. And then last up, this has been on my to be read list for quite a while. It's called Severance by Ling Ma. It's post-apocalyptic. And so I'm not sure I need any more apocalypse-esque things to read right now, but it's supposed to be wonderful. It's on my list to read. So all these things, I've been getting people commenting that they would like to see this list written down. I will put it on my website. All these books, the ones including my favorites and the ones that I have on my to-do list. I did want to thank everyone who did read the chapter. It's only 10 pages of Giovanni's Room, but I did want to give a little bit more time for people who only really had like 12 hours or something to read it, and because of the time change. And so shoot me an email. Don't forget, quarantini@ericservini.com is where you can submit your responses. And our discussion question was, what is the symbolic significance of the room, the physical space in Giovanni's room? Finally, this weekend, I will be looking and deciding on the final lineup for all of the films and books that we'll be reading. So if you have anything on your TBR list, which is the to be read list, something that you've been meaning to read or that you would suggest for other people, write in the comments below and let me know because I am all ears. I'm hoping for the next one, I want to read something new for the first time and I'll read it along with you guys. And so I'll be a little bit more dependent on some of your insight because I really want to use this time to also broaden my own horizons. And so please let me know what you think and what you'd like to read or watch. But otherwise, tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, that's 12 Pacific, we'll be discussing that chapter of Giovanni's Room, Part 2, Chapter 1. Thank you so much for joining in and bearing with me with the quality on this. We're going to figure out how to make this quality better and more consistent. But until then, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Dr. Eric Servini. This was Quarantini Day 7. And don't forget, if you need to get caught up, just go to quarantini.lgbt. Thanks so much, guys.